How do I help other entrepreneurs or side hustlers prevent what I had to go through? How do I prevent them from having the regret of not spending time with their family and their loved ones? How do I help them continue to grow and evolve without sacrificing themselves?
Welcome to another edition of Living Boldly with Purpose. I'm Dr. B. I'm your host, and as I get a little bit older, Rob, and I kind of see the different things. I just love doing this show every time because I get to meet people who are doing some fantastic things in this world. This morning, I do a 3-mile walk every morning, and this morning I was doing my walk and I was reflecting. And just reflecting, today I turned 60. And so, I'm going, what have my last 60 years been like? What have I been able to do? What have I been able to accomplish? And I love the fact that I have 8 children. I have 16 grandkids, and I get to be a dad and a father. And, the things that when I believe someday, and I hope with another 60 years, I'll be on my deathbed and I'll say, those are the things that were super important. But the other side of it is the things that we get to do when we think about our purpose and being able to serve others and being able to make sure that other people that come across our path are better. Tomorrow I've been invited down to I'm in Colorado, so I've been invited down to our state capitol, and I get to do like a 5-minute speech on the steps about stuff. And I'm trying to think of what am I going to talk about with all the turmoil and all the things that are going on in our country, and I think about opportunity and what are the opportunities that people have. And, I think one of the things I just want to talk about is I feel like I live in this world of abundance. I don't live in this world of lack. And when I think about some of the things and some of the laws that are being made and some of the things that are happening in our country, it's all based on people believing that there's lack. Like that, like if you allow me to have an opportunity, somehow it takes that opportunity away from you. And I know you don't think that way. And I know that you're out there because there's just so many resources. And when one is depleted, another one pops up. I mean, we have technology and everything else. And so, I think about like weld blubber back in the 1600s, and that lit the whole world, right? That was all our candles and lamps and everything else. And we run out of weld. So we find dinosaur oil, right? And when we run out of dinosaur oil, we'll find something else. But it's just so amazing that there's so many folks that are not in the space that you and I are in sometimes that just think there's not enough. And, I want people to know as I'm turning 60, there's been enough and there will be enough. And we'll be able to do it. But today's show is actually get to talking about Rob and his story and what he's doing and how he's helping people and how he's living with purpose and what he does. And I've asked him, like I do all of our guests, to tell his story and where he came from and where he's at. And, I think more importantly, why he's doing what he's doing. And, from that, we'll just chop it up and do some more. So, Rob, the floor is yours. Thank you for being on the show. Thank you for spending my birthday with me. And
Yeah.
get to move forward and talk. And so I appreciate, for most people, we don't know when you're going to watch this, but you'll know exactly what day. Rob was on my show. So
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time on your birthday to come on and talk with me and hear a little bit about my story. I appreciate you taking the time and birthdays right around here are great. My girlfriend's birthday was yesterday. It's just a powerful time of the year, I guess. So, I love that. And I really love how you kind of introed us there, because I was just listening to a story the other day, and how a lot of people look at life and they think of the game of poker. Like you can't succeed unless somebody else loses, kind of thing. And that's just not true, as you were saying. Like people think we live in a zero sum kind of world, but no, like collaboration, opportunities all around. And yeah, I just love that. That was a powerful way to start off this show. I love that.
Cool. Well, tell us about you. Where are you from? Where are you?
Yeah. So Yeah, yeah. So, well, life is great now, and it started way back when. I won't go too far back, but uh, I started born in Philadelphia.
Okay.
Parents got divorced at a super young age. That was me, my sister, and my mom had traveled across state borders. We found ourselves up in New York, upstate New York. We bounced around a bunch of different towns and school districts. And in the early ages, when you're changing around a lot of different schools, it makes it pretty difficult to make friends, and not only make friends, but to maintain friends. So it was challenging for myself as a young kid. And until we found ourselves in a small town of Highland, um, which eventually became home. And then from there, I connected with a good buddy of mine. His name was Sean. He encouraged me to come out for a sports team. I was like the furthest from athletic. I was like the kind of kid that just kept to himself, TV, junk food, just chilling. But his dad really encouraged me to come out to play football. And I learned two very powerful lessons that day, my first day of football practice. The first one I learned was you can't wear jeans to football practice. So if anybody listening has played sports before, jeans are
Yeah.
definitely not the best athletic
Yeah.
wear.
No.
So that was the first thing I learned. The second thing I learned, as I'm struggling to keep up during the warm-up lap, I noticed that a lot of the popular kids, or the kids that were more athletic, seemed to be able to just cruise through the warm up and practice, and everybody knew them. They seemed to just guide smoothly across the field. And so I took that to heart, and I didn't know any plays. I didn't know what I was doing, but I could remember the warm up, like the jumping jacks and the push ups and things like that. So I started to implement those on my own at home. And that really became the gateway to personal development for me. As I continued to do the warm up at home, I started to get in a little bit better shape. I started to get a little bit stronger. The stronger I got, the faster I got. The faster and stronger I was, the more time I got to play. Eventually, playing more and more and more, gained some popularity on the team, starting position, playing more friends led to more birthday parties. And then if I wanted to go to those birthday parties, my mom made sure that my grades were good. So then I had to pay attention to what I was eating, what I was consuming, books, all that stuff. And that really just kind of excelled my personal development growth through the years. Uh, got into football. I played football college year of our freshman year of college. I shifted over to rugby, connected with a new family there with that team. We went on to win a state championship. Still played competitively throughout. Thank you, thank you. And I realized that towards the end of my college career, I was losing my new family, and because my family was split at a young age, sports became that adopted family for me. But then finishing up undergrad made it very difficult because I was starting to panic, like, oh, where am I going to connect? Who am I going to connect with? So it made it very easy for me to study kinesiology. For those who don't know, that's the study of human movement. And that was an easy segue for me to stay in the gym and connect with other athletes. And that's where my career as a strength and conditioning coach really started. Now I was able to work with athletes all the time, working together, trying to accomplish a common goal of a championship, or at least playing time and different things like that. And that led me eventually to grad school, so I can get better at coaching and really know and master the human body and performance enhancement. And in strength and conditioning, typically you go two routes. You either go the collegiate setting and then trying to work with big sports teams and hope to get to the pros one day, or you go into the private sector. And that's a little bit more business entrepreneurial world. And I chose the private sector, and that gave me my first taste of entrepreneurship. So I remember I was interning, and I was like mopping the floors like 3 times a day, like cleaning up, scrubbing everything as if it was brand new, class after class, team after team. And eventually my internship ended, and the facility I was at offered me a salary job. So I took that, and I just noticed how my commitment to the gym just started to decrease. And then I was sitting around, I'm like, man, this place is messy. Someone should clean it up. And I realized that that's me. That's what I used to do. And I realized that that's not who I am. I've always found myself in a leadership role. I've always pushed myself super hard because there was always a challenge. There was always something else pushing me. And when I had that comfy salary job, I just kind of sat back and just kind of went through the motions. And when I realized that that's not really who I am, I had to step into a little bit more aggressive positions, kind of starting personal training business, handling other things on the side. So that way I really controlled, pretty much ate what I killed almost. The more I would train with clients, the more money I would make, the more success I thought I had. So when I had that mindset shift, I quickly scaled my book of clients up to the point where I was working like 12, 13, 14, sometimes 15-hour days, 7 days a week for about 3 years. I just nonstop holidays, birthday parties, weddings, friends, babies, all those things. I missed a lot of those things because I was stuck in what I call robot mode. And being robot mode isn't necessarily a negative thing because you're efficient, you get a lot of work done, and things come a lot easier. But at the same time, you lose human mode. You lose that conscious awareness and you lose the relationships all around you. And I was quickly losing a lot of friends and family. And it wasn't until a year after my dad had actually passed away suddenly with pancreatic cancer that I had realized that, like, hey, I missed out on those final moments with my dad and I'm never going to get those back. And in that period after he passed, it was no longer about making money. It was more about a distraction from what my life had became. So for me, continuing to work, continuing to train clients, that got me away from the reality of what life really became. And there was this one holiday weekend, a lot of families were traveling and I just couldn't fill my schedule. I was trying so hard. I was going through my phone. I was swiping off client after contact, almost like a bad dating app. I would just swipe, looking for somebody. And I couldn't fill that schedule. And in that moment of reflection of, okay, what's going on? Who is this life? What am I doing? I knew something needed to change. And from that moment there, I had to reflect on what's helped me be successful or what's led me to what I thought was success in the past. And how do I change course? And how do I help other entrepreneurs or side hustlers prevent what I had to go through? And how do I prevent them from having the regret of not spending time with their family and their loved ones? And how do I help them continue to grow and evolve and without sacrificing themselves? And then that eventually led to the creation of Prime Performance Coaching. And that's really where I'm at now, sharing some of these experiences and some of these stories on stages and workshops and connecting with other entrepreneurs and side hustlers and really helping them avoid burnout and continue to grow both professionally and personally too. And since then, it's just stages, connecting and kind of growing.
I turned Mike off to cough and then forgot to turn it back on. So I got lots of questions. As I think about, where you were at, I think you're wearing jeans, showing up to practice, and then you realize, hey, I could be a pretty good athlete, and then taking it to that next level. But when I think about identity, and the identity being so powerful of who we are and how we hold ourselves, maybe kind of walk me through that identity from the guy who shows up to practice to the guy who's now a state champion. And now after that's over, like you said, what's that identity shift in your mind of who you are when your family, your sports family is no longer, you can't compete anymore. You're not, I get you, especially you're not in the professional world of whatever that sport is. Now you're going, okay, what's my life like? Maybe kind of walk us through some of the thoughts and some of the things that were part of your mind and how you move forward from it.
Yeah. So as I had mentioned when I was a young kid, like sports, physical fitness, that kind of became the entryway for what I thought was success. And taking care of your body, food, exercise, things like that, helped me build discipline. It helped me build confidence in myself, both physically and mentally, and allowed me to kind of create this identity of this athlete. And the first kind of identity crisis, I guess you could say, was when coming to the realization that I probably wasn't going professional with football.
Uh, yeah.
So like kind of handling that and then going through a bunch of different things. I think your identity kind of flows and evolves with you as an individual. And I think what happens a lot with success is a lot of people kind of default back to the most successful version of themselves, and they try to hold on to that. When in reality, sometimes you need to shift your identity into who you need to become next. So as I was saying, I had played football and then rugby in college, and that continued to carry through with success. And then after college, I shifting into the coaching role until about a few years back now, I had an opportunity to play rugby again with a couple of guys, and that found me on like a hot summer morning, like super super hot, early in the day, the kind of like where the ground was cracking, kind of hot. And I'm sitting there thinking like, all right, I'm ready for this. Like college Rob, he was this animal. He led the team to a state championship. We went to nationals. We lost by 1 point. I'm ready to roll. But it took about like 5 minutes for me to realize that I'm not that same Rob anymore. And I was struggling in the beginning. I was out of position. I was not making the plays that I thought I normally would, because I kept trying to play as who I used to be instead of stepping into this new position, this new player that I needed to be to help the team succeed. And when that kind of clicked in my head, I started to shift and change my approach a little bit. And I think that idea there to set myself up to play the best position possible transfers over into a lot of different things in life, like where I was at with my coaching and my original identity of who I wanted to be, teaching squat patterns and deadlift patterns my whole life. And once I realized that there was more to me, and I wanted to help more people in different ways, I needed to shift and then see like, okay, well, if I want to change my coaching approach, if I want to change what I do and how I impact people, these are some things that I need to start to do. And having that new identity that I was working towards allowed me to start making better decisions on the actions I needed to take, the different courses and the material that I needed to consume to step into the role as a speaker, as a workshop host, as different the new Rob version. But that all kind of starts with that awareness of, okay, well, where am I? Who am I? What is it that I actually want to achieve? What are my values? What are my strengths and what are my weaknesses? And asking yourselves those questions can be challenging, but when you put through the hard work to do that, things start to smoothly level out for you. And then new opportunity starts to arise because you know how to make better decisions. You know how to act optimally.
Yeah. What do you think separate, because you brought up something that I see a lot in athletes, and I see a lot in, where your identity becomes what you do instead of who you are. And then, like you said, they live like their best life over and over and over again, and they just don't move past it. Like I have friends still that, and like I said, I'm 60 now, and I still have friends that I had in college that when we get together, or even when we're on Facebook or whatever, all they want to do is talk about when we were in college. And I'm trying to, I mean, that's 40 years, almost 40 years ago for me. When I started college, I'm like, I don't know if I want to remember that. I mean, there's so much that has happened in my life in the last 40 years that says, but I was able to take that identity and shift it, and so many other people were not. What do you think for you that was that said, wait a minute, I'm not doing this anymore, even though I got the opportunity to play again, but that's not who I am. I'm this other person. What kinds of things? Was it different associations, or what do you think it was that allowed you to move forward?
Really, it was kind of doing some deep internal reflection. I was like, I wasn't satisfied. I wasn't happy, and I was hitting these new financial milestones that I was trying to hit. But I never really understood why I was trying to hit those different milestones. So taking a step back and then thinking about that and looking at it like, okay, well, why do I want to do this? Like, okay, cool. Like I was making lots of money. My coaching business was pretty successful where I was working tons and tons of hours, but I didn't have time to enjoy any of that success or enjoy any of that. And couldn't do it with anybody that I really cared about because everybody else had started distancing themselves because I was always defaulting to work, work, work. And I think that really stemmed from misaligning my value. I think at a young age, I was like rewarded for the performance instead of, or I was rewarded for like the outcome instead of the process. So if I performed well on tests or sports, I would get praise, and then that would lead to, okay, I need more, I need more, I need more, instead of really aligning my value with the actions and the process that it took. I heard on another great podcast somewhere that like this individual was teaching their kids like, hey, yeah, you want to strive to get those A's and you want to get 100, but it's also important to praise them for the study time and putting the work in. So that helps align their identity with their hard working, not just the score that they got on the test. And I think part of that really helped me kind of shift into like, okay, it's not necessarily about how much money I'm making. It's I want more impact. I want to help others. I want to do more. I want to do these different things. And I think a lot of people get kind of confused or get caught up in the outcomes way more than the process. So like when I was still working with a lot of people on weight loss, everybody was just fixed on losing that a couple pounds or losing X, Y, and Z instead of like, hey, let's pay attention to what are we doing? What are the steps that we're doing? Are we staying consistent with what we're trying to eat? Are we staying consistent with our exercise and things like that? And really aligning ourselves with those steps and actions instead of just the sole outcome.
Yeah, I think of the Ozempic craze right now, and everybody wanting to get a shot but is that the identity that they truly want? Like even once they lose the weight, I think they think it's going to make them happy because their body looks different or something. But without the internal portion of that, it's like, why are you doing this? Why is it that you want to look like this? And once you do, does that change anything else you do? Does that change your habits? Does that change, the person that you become? Is that any different? Because if it's not, I don't know if that makes a difference in how you react. I mean, you're in the space right now and everybody's trying to, thinking the easy way to look a certain way. Is that fixing the problem for some folks? Or
I mean, for some individuals, I would assume it is helping them, but like you said, unless they are kind of aligned with their values and why they're doing it, I think it'll still leave them kind of unfulfilled and kind of seeking more. Like values, I feel like kind of gets thrown around a lot, and I know for myself when I was fitness training like 24/7, it was I like understood some values, but I didn't really understand my values, and at the time I had to dig in and figure that out. And I'm a big acronym guy. So like for me, I figuring out my values is PACE, PACE. So as long as I'm always progressing towards mastery, I'm challenging myself and getting better at things, I'm on track. As long as I'm seeking adventure, having fun with what I'm doing, I know that I'm aligned. And if it's something that if I'm contributing to others or helping some other way, then I know I'm on track. And then the last letter E is embodying freedom. So as long as I know that I'm making the decision and I actually want to be doing this, I know I'm on track. So that progress towards mastery, P, adventure, A, contribution, C, and then embody freedom is E. That helped me align. But until I knew those things, I was stuck in a position where like I thought I was the master of like squat patterns and diet and there's nothing anybody else could teach me because I had a master's degree and I was reading research all the time and I was just stuck right there. Doom, no more progress. I wasn't having fun because where it used to be fun to connect with others, now all I was doing was like tracking scale weights and counting reps, and that gets pretty dull after a little while. So that sucked away the adventure from me. And then, yeah, I felt like I was contributing and providing value to a lot of people, but like it wasn't filling enough. It was just me showing up. I wasn't putting myself into more things. And then at the end of the day, I ended up losing that freedom. So I wasn't embodying freedom. I was pretty much a slave to my schedule, and I was stuck choosing what other people wanted me to do. So if somebody wanted to train at 3:30 in the morning, I was booking that session. If somebody was training at 9 o'clock at night, I was booking that session. and I had no control over it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's four red flags right there. And like, that's it for me. And like,
Wow. Well, and you talked about this pivotal moment, and I kind of want to go back to it because a pivotal moment when you couldn't fill your schedule. And I would love to know what the thought process was as why you needed to fill that schedule that weekend. As you're dialing through and you're scrolling and you're trying to find somebody, why was it so important before you had the epiphany, but so important that that schedule be filled during that weekend, that you couldn't just have a weekend off?
well,
What was holding you there?
so originally it was, okay, how how long can I keep this schedule packed, because I was making more money, and then like the money was great. I could essentially do whatever I wanted to, but at the sacrifice of not being able to do anything with anybody or actually having anybody. So I was just chasing that financial. And
Okay.
then my dad had passed away,
Oh,
and that new chase for a full schedule wasn't financial. It was a distraction. So that I couldn't reflect on where my life had become.
yeah.
And it was that Friday night, and I can remember very vividly because I was sitting in my living room, and like I'm making more money than I've ever had in my life, but I'm living in this apartment that just has furniture from my dad's house that when he had passed away, I just inherited. So I'm just sitting there in this cold apartment by myself and in my dad's lazy boy recliner chair. And I'm sitting there and I just can't get anybody to come and train for the weekend. And I'm like, what's going on? And then as I sat there, I kind of like looked back and I looked around. There's nothing in my apartment except for the chair. There's like two things over by the TV. It's on like basically on the floor. And I'm just like looking around. I'm like, what do normal people do on a Friday night? And I'm like, what did I used to do? And I was like, I used to go out with friends, used to go to the movies, parties, different things. And then I was like, wow, it's crazy how my life has changed. And like, this is weird. And then I started thinking a little bit more about my dad and how he had worked for 30 plus years and developing stage 4 pancreatic cancer and passing away pretty much in 6 weeks, and realizing like, wow, he worked his entire life and all he ever talked about was chilling out, retirement, beach, listening to good tunes. And he never even got there. And I'm like, what was all that over 30 years of work for then? And then that started thinking to myself, like, is this going to be me? Am I just destined to just teach these like bench press and squats for the rest of my life? And then in my head, I was like,
Yeah.
there's got to be something else. I got to do something else. And from there, it's when I kind of the switch flipped, and I was like, I can't be doing this anymore. I gotta do something differently.
Well, thank you for that because that makes so much better sense as to, hey, I'm trying to fill a hole that is, like you said, it's a distraction. And it reminded me, I listened to something not too long ago where it said winners always quit, and there was like 10 things that winners quit. It's like, and then like in losers never win or something like that. But it was one of the things, or I'll just go through and maybe get your reaction on it. Winners always quit lying to themselves. So maybe you can talk about maybe some of the lies that you were telling yourself. The second one is winners quit making excuses, as to why they don't move forward or why they don't do anything. And then the third one is winners find other, things to be intentional about instead of being distraction. So with those three things,
Yeah.
lies, excuses and distractions, what would you say were the things in the past that you've now, and we never all fully, obviously we still continue to get distracted. We try not to make as many excuses as we want. And then are there any lies that we still tell ourselves? Because I think we all have those. I'm gonna live forever, right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So what are some of those lies you think you told yourself before that you're not telling yourself now as a result of all these things?
Yeah. I think one of the lies is just the whole idea of like movement equals progress. Like, just because I had this full schedule and I was doing this thing and I was launching my dietary supplement line, I was doing all this other things. I thought I was tricking myself into enjoying what I was doing and into like creating more stuff. But I wasn't really. I was just spinning. I was just with clients, and I would always turn other people down in different things because I would lie to myself and say like I'm busy and like this is a badge of honor to like work super hard and like grind myself. I'll sleep when I'm dead kind of mentality. And that's just not true. Like you can't continue to pour with an empty cup, right? Like you got to like reflect on yourself. You got to make sure you're aligned with different things. And yeah, I think really it was like, I'll sleep when I'm dead, like keep pushing and stacking it all up. Cause now talking in the other point there, talking about excuses, for a while there, once I had shifted, I started filling my schedule with coaching calls and different events and podcasts and different things like that. And I dedicated a time period where I would just work on like being creative and coming up with new things and strategizing for like the next steps or the next 6 months or whatever. And it became so easy for myself to just, oh, so and so has a dentist appointment and they can only meet at this time. Like, oh yeah, we can come over here, and then plops that right into middle of my like focus work. And then somebody else is like, oh, I can't do this. Can we do that? And so my excuses was just like, yeah, it's more important to make sure that I was meeting with these other people, when in reality, I needed to continue to fill up my own cup and plan and strategize for the next steps. So those excuses kind of kept piling up, and then I never would really sit down. So even though I had already started to make the shift with my coaching, I still wasn't really listening to what I needed to do and stay within my boundaries and hold true to those, because I got to hold myself to the same level of respect as I hold all my clients. Like I need to honor my own time for the business and for everything else like that. And what was the third one you
That
said
one
there?
was distractions. What kind of distractions did because we all do that. A thing. We're trying to achieve something, but we allow life, I guess, or the distractions of, I think of, some folks that are so broke and they're saying, I got to do, some people that we coach, right? And they
Yeah.
got, well, and then you ask them like, how many shows do you watch a week? And they got like, they go down this list of all these things that distract them.
Yeah.
So what are some of those things that I guess, distracted you? I know one of them was, just filling your schedule so full that you couldn't even hardly think about anything else. But maybe some other of those things.
So once I had made that leap and I started now getting into performance coaching and trying to help more people, I'm still working training fitness people, and then I'm also trying to bring on new clients. So one of my distractions was actually consuming too much content. So I'll explain. So like my background with strength and conditioning and nutrition as my specialty, it was always easy for me to relate nutrition to vehicles. I drive a Jeep Wrangler. I really love the Jeep. I've always only ever driven Jeep. And so I use that as an easy analogy, like, okay, the proteins that you consume builds the structure of the vehicle, makes it tough and rugged. The carbohydrates that you're consuming helps fuel you. It's like the gasoline you're putting in. And then the healthy fats that you're eating are like the oils that you put in so that the vehicle can run smoothly. And when I was going up to Montreal with my girlfriend, we were doing a weekend trip. I had realized that there was another half to that. It's the digital nutrition too. So like as I'm driving down the road, there's bugs and dirt all splashing onto my windshield, which is Netflix and social media, doom scrolling, things like that. And it's easy to just wipe the screen with the wiper fluids and brush it away. And then you're clear and you can see ahead again. And that wiper fluids and the wipers themselves is like educational content or motivational content, like the amp up videos on YouTube or purchasing a new course to kind of help your business. And that's good because it helps clear the vision. But at the same time, you can get caught in a thunderstorm that's so heavily downpour that no matter what, you can't see. So you got to turn on your hazards and you got to slow down a little bit, even with the wipers flashing as fast as possible. Overload of too much of that motivation and education still slows and hinders your process and your journey to get to your goal. So when I had shifted into my new coaching, I was just consuming, I was signing up for different coaching programs. I was reading these books and podcasts, audio, And because I was consuming so much, I was never actually taking action on anything. So for me, my distraction was listening to these podcasts and listening to books and courses. And one course would turn into a second course and a third one. And that just continued to be more distractions. And I never actually would take the steps to initiating the new coaching practice and what I wanted to do, instead of just being like, hey, this is what I'm doing. Let me just get out there and start telling people about it.
Yeah. I love that, and it brought me back because, I was a Jeep guy too for a long time, and my Jeep became my distraction, right? As I was lifting it and I was putting, a winch on it, like, where am I going that I'm going to use this winch? Yeah, I'm going to go Jeeping, or, get the tires. And, I'm like, well, there's so many things that I should be doing that I know I should be doing. And yet I'm out here in the garage putting something else on. But I love that analogy of just, the things that can distract us. I want to kind of go back to, one of the things that, I don't know a saying that I've heard, what it's about enough. We were talking about the folks that, can never get to the point where it's enough. And it was, enough is not an amount. It's a relationship with where you're at right now. And what would you say to that when you think about that in terms of, the folks that you're helping and the folks that are trying to get the easy way to get to something without going through becoming? Like, my whole process in my coaching is all about becoming the person you need to be so that you can do the things you want to do, and then you get to have instead of have to be, or start with doing and then hope that you have. Because if you're not that, if you become that person, you're automatically going to be able to do it. At least that's how I do it. But when I start thinking about enough and people just jumping into, something simple like Ozempic or something where they're utilizing something that can help them get to what the look that they think so fast. Can they ever get enough, or is that something that you believe, or kind of just walk me through that a little bit?
Yeah, I think because as you were saying that, it reminded me of are you familiar with Alex Hormozy? Yeah, so I heard a clip of him one time talking, and he was talking about raising kids and how I don't have any kids, so I don't actually know how it is, but you have a couple kids, and I from what he said there kind of resonated with me. It was like, if you want your son to be strong and resilient and able to handle things, do you just kind of give him everything, or do you give him challenges for him to solve? And then it was the same thing. It's like, if you want your son or daughter to be smart and good at making decisions, do you just hand him like predetermined things all the time, or do you allow him to kind of experience it and learn and establish that kind of skill and identity? And I think that comes with that whole question of when is enough and things like that. Because with Ozempic and things like, yeah, you don't build the other skills and the habits and the practices and build the identity. You're just kind of jumping into the results. And you see this all the time with people who win the lottery, right? So many people hit the lottery and then they go bankrupt right immediately after. Whereas you find somebody who's built their wealth and they've built success and they understand what it takes to go from zero to a zillion, they can build it back because they have all those things there and in them, and they can kind of bounce back to that. So I think without going through it a little bit and without gaining some of those tangible skills and habits, I think enough just never ends, because you can't appreciate what you do have. You just lose it right away, and then you seek it instantly again. So same thing with yeah, even if I were to just give like $1 million to somebody, they burn through it and then they don't appreciate any of that money. And then it's not enough. Or if they have it, they can keep moving the goalpost forward. Like myself with the fitness training, it's just kind of constantly pushing it forward and until it's at the end of the end zone and there's no more room for it and something has to give.
When I think about it, and thank you for that, because it is, so true. You have to go through, like, the pressure of a diamond in order to become a diamond. It has to go through something. And I think people do. When I think about like prime performance and being, playing above the rim, I guess would be, where I'm at, and as you're mentally working, and and I'm thinking of like the mental health side of things. And what kind of things, as you're coaching folks, do you help them? Because it's one thing, you like you said, you go to the gym and you can work out all the time, to develop whatever it is that you help somebody accomplish or go through, and to have that healthy sense of, because we can be so imbalanced, and I do believe there are seasons, like you have to work for 2 years, maybe just going after it all of a sudden, but to have that balance, and I don't know if balance is ever achieved, but that to have that fulfillment, I guess, is what I'm asking. What are some of the mental, I guess, exercises that when we think about peak performance, that separates somebody who is performing at that level above the rim compared to somebody who's going through the motions?
Yeah, I think a lot of what I do teach with my clients and audience members is really paying attention to what works for you. So in all different I teach 6 different pillars, and every pillar's got an underline of awareness and paying attention. And yeah, there are different seasons, but if you're caught in that, if you're stuck in that robot mode like I was,
Mhm.
you don't have a boundary or a deadline or an end period to that season. You're just constantly always in season. You don't know where, like, the off season, the championships, you don't know where preseason is. And then that's where you get stuck in those. And without awareness, you can't really define where you're at on those. So yeah, going to the gym, that's easy because that teaches programs, that teaches you, okay, here's the start of the program. You got 12 weeks, 90 days, whatever it is. That's where you're going to finish. And then that's where you reflect and kind of determine whether or not you want to continue with the program or change certain stimulus and stuff. And the same thing with business and on entrepreneurship too. You say you're taking on a new skill or a new hobby, or like for example, for myself, when I wanted to get on stages and start speaking more, I just took one class and I was like, all right, I'm ready to roll. But no, I had no idea how to structure anything. I didn't know how to do anything. So then I started to set certain milestones, like, okay, I'm going to do certain things here. I'm going to take this approach with my practices. And then at the end of this season, it's time for me to reflect what went well. What do I need to do better with? What could I do better with? Or where do I need to, like, reference out? For example, for me with my podcast, it was my tech. Like, it was a lot for me to understand, like, okay, what camera do I need to get, or a microphone, or how do I use the tech to host it? And for me, I could only do so much. And in that reflection, my first couple of episodes, they were great, but they're not my best episodes.
Mhm.
And I learned that, okay, this is something that I can't do to the fullest that I want to be doing. So that's when I hired a small team of assistants to kind of help me get that into better shape and get that to another level. But I would have never known that if it wasn't for the awareness aspect and setting those deadlines and practicing those deadlines and boundaries so that I can learn and grow and change and go forward from there. And I think that's true. I think awareness in everything, every aspect of your life, is important. So I teach these 6 different principles, and it comes through in all of those. And when I'm working with individuals, it's like, okay, hey, let's do a little reflection period here. How are we doing on X, Y, and Z? Are we doing well? If not, what do we need to change? If anything at all, should we continue? What do we got to do? I learned from one of my managers way back in like undergrad, a little practice. It was start, stop, continue. So kind of like the traffic light. So what do you need to start doing? So what's your green light to implement in the next period or next season? What do you need to stop doing? So your red light. And then your yellow light, what do you need to continue doing? So that simple little exercise there is great, but you can't do that. You can't help yourself if you don't have certain deadlines or check-in periods or reflection process or something.
Man, I like that. And that's all part of the awareness, is because you can't create and know awareness if you don't have checks in the
Yeah.
middle of it to go, okay, where am I at and how do I break? Because I think some of us get so involved in doing, back to
Yeah.
the doing, right, that we don't stop and go, wait a minute, is this doing even working? Or
Yeah.
am I just, or because what we do is like where you do, right? We just add more time to it. Well, if I just do this a little bit longer or do this a little bit more, then it's all going to work. Not reflect and go, the things I've been doing, none of that's really working right now.
Yeah.
So I got to be aware of the fact that it's not. So I love that. Talk a little bit just about associations and the people, because you talked about like Alex Hermosi and some of the other folks that you listen to, which to me, those are associations. But you also said I consumed too much content at one point. How do you pick and choose I guess, the inner circle of people that are part of your life to kind of not only guard against some of the other things that could be bad that happen, but in order to move you forward, to progress you in the direction you want to go? How important is those associations and how do you cultivate them?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess the default answer is awareness, and
Yeah, I love it.
so I got a great little exercise that I work with a lot of people, and it's really paying attention because pillar number 5 for me is social capital and influence, and really diving into those. The awareness is okay. Who's on your team? And for those who haven't played sports before, usually you've got a coach at the top who kind of controls everything and like dictates practices and teaches the players. You've got a couple captains who the team relies on or leans on, and they're meant there to lead the way and hold the rest of the team accountable when the coach isn't around. And then also when you're playing sports, there's a crowd of supporters around cheering you guys on. So I always run through an exercise of like, okay, whatever kind of endeavor or activity or thing that you're working on currently, you got to make sure we find some sort of a coach, whether you know them or you can just learn from them and consume something. So that coach is that mentor, that role model, that person who's got something that you want to get so you can start to learn from them. Then you want to identify 3 captains. So these are people, I heard somebody saying they're not competitors, they're niche neighbors. So they're individuals who are in the same world or industry as you. Maybe you do know them, maybe you don't know them, but these are the individuals that you should be able to test different ideas and kind of see who they are. So when I started speaking, a couple of my buddies, we would get together and we would talk about different events, and we would share different events with each other to help us kind of build our speaking. But then at the same time, they've got different programs and I'm running programs, and they're joining mine and I'm joining theirs. So you work together, you collaborate, and those are the captains that you want to have. And then finally, you want to have at least 5 members of the crowd that you can call on for support, to do something, to show up at an event, or to just talk to when things don't seem to be going as well. These are those individuals that keep you motivated, keep you pushing forward. So when things do start to slope a little bit, because remember, like, success isn't totally linear as much as we'd love it to be. When you do dip down a little bit, these are the members that kind of bump you back up. So identifying the coach, the captains, and the crowd really is a great tool. And if you don't know where those people are, thank God we've got the internet, right? Like ChatGPT and Google. And it's pretty easy to just type in like surfing coach or surfing guy, and then you could just find them on Instagram and you can start from that, or looking in local networking events. It's easy to go out and go to these different events and connect with a lot of people. I know networking events typically gets a negative kind of tone to it because a lot of people are going out trying to like push themselves. But when I go to networking events, I'm going to just make genuine connections. I love sushi. So when I go, I look to find at least one person that I can invite to a sushi lunch and literally just sit and chill and talk about non-business. And if I can do that, then I know it's been a successful opportunity. And then you just share, try to give a little bit back, and you just connect. And then one way or another, people end up gravitating towards you.
Man, I love that because it gives you a blueprint or a foundation to go find people. Because if we think we're going to do it on our own, you're just fooling yourself. You cannot do it on your own. One of the things I would love you to answer as part of this, though, is what do I need to know about myself in order to cultivate and find a new team? Because I think we sometimes we pretend like we're an avatar of somebody else. Oh, they got this team, and that Rob told me this is what I need, the type of person I need to have on my team. And then you go find that person, and it's like, well, that's not working because they have nothing. You don't know enough about you. Maybe some of the awareness you got to know about yourself. But are there like 2 or 3 things that I got to know about me before I go try to choose the people that are, try to find and connect with the people
Yeah.
that are going to help?
Yeah. So yeah, it's perfect because my principle number 3 is all about that, like, clarity, knowing who you are and helping bring focus to a lot of things. And I said earlier that I'm a big acronym guy. So the acronym, I'm also a Pirates of the Caribbean fan, so I love the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. So when I was thinking of a framework to kind of teach the people, I came up with the pirate's flag. So when you're lost and you're trying to navigate the world yourself, you don't necessarily need a map to get back to where you were. You just need that pirate's flag. You got to follow that flag. When you climb the top of a mountain, you post your flag in there. And that's great because, like you said, you start to find some of these individuals, you want to learn from them and grow, but eventually you got to make it your own. And if you don't know which flag to follow, you got to look back at your own there. And flag is an acronym. So F is foundational values. So that's where I kind of dove in and figured out going at my own pace. You got to really dig deep into that, really figuring out what makes you tick and the reasons why you're driven to go do these different things. And once you have that part done, because it can be difficult to kind of figure out your personal values and what you hold true to yourself. So that takes a lot of effort. But once you figure that out, then you move to the next letter, L, which is lifestyle. So what is the lifestyle you want to live? What are the things that you enjoy that really make you unique? So like I shared earlier, Jeep Wrangler, and I like sushi. Food competitions, a lot of these things. And in that period, it's fun because now you get to ask yourself why. I'm like, okay, I like driving Jeeps because you can take the doors off, you can customize them, you can go off-roading. And that shows that I like adventure, I like to be unique, I like to do those things. And so that's pretty fun. So you've got the first 2 letters, you got your foundational values with L, you've got your lifestyle traits with, or F, and then lifestyle traits with L. A is your aspiration. So what are your actual goals? A lot of times people just set goals because they think that's what they need to do. Like for myself with my personal training business, it was like, okay, I need to hit X amount of money for this year. And it was like, okay, well, why? And I was like, oh, because I thought if I hit that big of a number, people would respect me more and people would I'd get more attention and things like that. But I didn't really want that. I was just chasing it because I thought that's what I wanted to do. So really digging into like, okay, what are your goals? What are your aspirations? And are they actually for you? And then the last letter is G, which is growth. And where are you actually spending time to get better? What are your strengths and your weaknesses? Can you play your strengths in a different way? Do you need to shift some of your weaknesses around or your growth opportunities around so that somebody else can help you or bring up your bottom dollar kind of thing? And once you have that kind of laid out, you have such a better understanding of yourself. And that makes it easier to make decisions and people to follow because when I dug into myself, I like coaching, I like teaching, I like doing things. And once I had that down, I realized that this guy named Brett Bartholomew, he's the founder of Art of Coaching. He was also an ex-strength and conditioning coach, and he teaches leadership and communication. And I love that. So I bought his book. I started listening to his podcast. I started going to a couple of his workshops. I started going to more of his workshops. I got asked by Brett to come onto the team as a facilitator for his workshop. So now I get to do those things that I love with this guy who's a mentor of mine, all because I did that flag assignment and I figured out what my real values and things were. And that really opened the door to so many opportunities.
That is so cool. So we have flags, we have Jeeps, we have pace, we have start, stop, and continue. All these wonderful things. And as we wind down and as we think about all the things that you're offering and all the things that you're helping people out with, what would be something we didn't talk about that you want to make sure that we talk about? And then I want you to make sure you tell everybody, how do I get this? How can I get this information? Where do I need to go? What are your sites? That kind of stuff. That would be helpful for folks to plug in, because this has been so helpful and meaningful. And as I've got now 2.5 pages of notes, how am I going to just tweak it a little bit of the trajectory that I'm on? So.
Yeah. Social media is probably the easiest place to find me, to navigate to different sites and things like that. Both Instagram and LinkedIn's where I hang out the most. And both handles, you can just kind of search my name, first and last, Rob Tracy. It's pretty pretty straightforward. Should pop up this beautiful picture of myself. And on there, you can reach out, ask me any kind of questions, or if anything resonated with you with this episode. I'd love to know how I did. So like, if you're listening to this, let me know if I was doing a great job communicating a lot of different things and sharing with me, because I love that. And if you like some of the information and things that I was saying, but maybe you're a little shy or such, like, come check out the podcast too. I'm dropping, I think, episode 85 on my show today at time of recording. And the show is called Surviving the Side Hustle, where I interview other great entrepreneurs and side hustlers at different stages of their journey, touching base with their story, their struggles, and their secrets to perform at a high level. So it's been a really fun project, and I really, really love that. So a lot of value from different guests and a little bit of inbits. So it's a cool place.
Oh, cool. Any other final last thoughts for anybody, or what's the closing thoughts, I guess is?
Yeah, I would say, as awareness being the underlying thing from pretty much everything that I do. I think we were starting to talk about it a bit there on how, like, leaning into the mentors and coaches for advice and how to get better with ourselves. But the biggest takeaway I think is pay attention to what works for you. I think it's easy to kind of dive in and follow a lot of other people with their advice and what's worked well for them. And as much as a lot of people say this thing works for everybody, blah, 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 there's got to be a time period where whatever you're doing, you can put your own unique spin on it, whether that is with like nutrition, dieting, business practices, communication, networking, any of those things. Like, pay attention to what really works for you and then lean into that, because that's how you're going to kind of continue to grow and expand and stay away from burnout specifically.
Yeah. Oh, so good. And what such great advice, because sometimes we can get caught up in trying to duplicate all these different people because they fed into us and they made us feel excited and they made us feel good. But realize that we have our own unique message to give. We have our own unique a way that we can live with our purpose. And so, Rob, I just want to thank you for being on today. I want to thank you for just taking the time out to give us all of this knowledge. And my prayer, my thought is that I hope people go there and they look you up and they interact with you and they can find a way that their trajectory can go in a way. When we think about your story and the things that you've done and how you were able to overcome, some of the things that were even when other folks would think it was going well, you said it wasn't going good enough. And so I love the fact that you shared that with us. And so for those of you who are watching this, please go ahead and hit subscribe and notifications and all those things. If this episode was something that impacted you, and somebody else who could benefit from it, share it with them. All you can do is not listen to it. But if you don't share it with them, then you're not allowing them the gift that you just have. And so I want you guys to have an amazing day. Don't forget that you are God's greatest gift. He loves you. Allow him to. And we'll look forward to talking to you on the next one. See you soon.